I went to New York University for art history and architecture. So that's where I started to want to have a career and also a diploma in architecture. So I wanted to apply for architecture graduate diploma when I was in university. So there was a long time of preparing all the stuff in the portfolio, and there were a lot of new things that I haven't encountered before, such as making models and doing all the hand drawings. And I didn't know that it was a very time-consuming process to design all of the stuff that I wasn't quite familiar with. It was an interesting experience. So I came from China, from a city called Chengchun, and I come to New York for university. This is like a very big difference in both lifestyles and then things I know. I studied architecture and urban design in the art history department in New York University. So I learned a lot of stuff about history of architecture, history of urban design, and then there were like a few design classes that were focused on the basic like drawings and stuff. I think to become an architect, like I started to want to learn about interior design because I always like to design like my own room when I was little. I always make changes for my room, and I think it's a quite interesting experience for me. I think it's very relaxing. So I want to study interior design, but I feel like to have a good understanding of interior design, I have to learn about the bigger stuff like the architecture. I feel like it's a more thorough, and like to learn about the small thing, you have to learn about the big things first. That's what I feel. So after I learned architecture, I feel like architecture is more rational. It's more tiring, but you definitely know more stuff, and it's very interesting and challenging. The design process is very rational. You have to know the things about the site. You have to know how people are living there, and you have to know like the weathers, maybe the culture, like sometimes how they manage the area. Those are the first things I have to know before I start design. Like before I learn architecture, before I feel like design is like you design whatever you like, but actually after I go to the school, I feel like design, like you have to do all the research stuff. That is very important at the first step, and then you can give the like more expected design. Yeah. First, the process of applying architecture, I have to prepare the portfolio. That's the most important thing. We went through a couple of designs from small scale to big scale. I remember the biggest scale was to design an urban space in New York. And then small scale, it comes to like small installations and stuff. For each project, I remember I have to build up the models, give ideas into the models, and then do a lot of drawings, hand drawings, rendering stuff. And then I did 5 projects in total, and then all of them take about half a year and maybe more, like 7 months, I remember, like to finish up everything. And then there's a lot of like going back and forth for each project, and I always need to make changes. For me, I think the most beneficial part is definitely the model making, and then the hand drawings, renderings, which I think like it gives me so much improvements about like how do you see the place like when you're actually in there. I made a lot of mistakes when I was drawing, like the scale was the scale was off, and then the perspective, and you need to fix the scale and the proportion of things when you do hand drawings in render. It just helps you to fix like what do you actually see in there and which will make changes to your design. And also the model making, like I haven't made models for design before, so I feel like making models is like you can see the object from like 4 sides. It's also helpful when I go to architecture school. Like we use different materials, but the process is somewhat the same. So like preparing all this stuff before I go to graduate school definitely helps me a lot, like to be more familiar with the design process. It's like develop a personal thesis for all of the projects that I have done. Yeah, I think to have that strategy is my strategy is like very much focused on the my personal experience. Like why do I like to enroll in architecture? And like all of my projects are also like very involved with the exterior space and nature stuff and how to improve people's life through my design. To have a strategy like this, it helps you to shape your projects to be more like maybe understandable, like, and it also helps you like the thinking process, like when you're given a project. The first one I think about is definitely the first project I did with you, which is the monolithic pavilion on the mountain. For that one, we start with the spatial thinking first, and then we fixed up the like how do I think is the most interesting space, like throughout like making the models first, and then making a model like this, it's like we finally decided to put the models, like we can put this model in the top of mountain as a pavilion for visitors. I think this is a very interesting project because I feel like making the models at first and to think about the space in between is like it's like you're both combining design and then spatial thinking at the same time. And another project that I did was a community. It's like a community garden with all the shipping containers that build up like I can build up like different sections for merchandise, for entertainment, and then like we have different sections. For that one, like I have to think about like how people live there and how the where are all the green space in the city at first, and how do they commute. To think about all those stuff, like it really helps me to like this is my first design stage, and I feel like this like process like this really helps me to make a better design and to have a better understanding of the place as well. Firstly, when before I go to architecture school, I have a very big dreams because I learned about all the famous architects in the textbook first, and they make like magical like buildings and then the like houses, and then after I have the study experience at Parsons, I feel like it's better to know about. Like if I'm given a design project, I need to know about the people, the site. So like as I said, I think like giving the most rational design is a very it's my kind of like goal in the design. So I'm still in the learning process. So I also need more working experience to achieve that as well. The program is 3 years in total, and then it's 2 years for people if you have studied architecture before. For each semester, we have 4 to 5 classes, like mostly the foundation classes in the first year. Like we studied we have studio classes every Tuesday and Thursday, and then there's also a representational class to to make you like learn about like how to represent stuff after you design. And then there is also like very foundational classes like history, and then history and theory stuff. That's mostly on the first year. And then in the second year, we also have like other studio classes, which is more focused in the urban scale. Like for last year, we have a project to study about the Rockaway Island, to design like a community. Like it's very big area to design things like urban planning, and then like a single building focused in one area. Next year we are gonna go to the thesis stage, like and then there are like more electives class. So yeah, for me it's definitely a good experience. Like you have like, for me, I am studying in the big studio space with all the people from interior design, lighting design, architecture design, like all of the people at the same time. Like sometimes you can happen to see what other people are doing for their major. Like I can see like the interior design people are making like the small shelves, like a little rooms, and then lighting, you can see people are like experimenting with light. It's quite a like an interesting space to have this experience, to work with people from all design fields. Is interesting, and there are also teachers like from different kinds of design fields to teach about architecture. Like they may not have an architecture background, but they can like teach you about like what they know about architecture. So like different perspectives, I think is interesting too. For studio class, we have like teachers mostly from the architecture background. Mostly like most of them have their own businesses. Like they have their like they have other occupations apart from the professor. I think the class that I enjoy the most is the studio class for this semester. We have like a very professional professor. Like he is from the architecture design background, and he has his own businesses, and he gives us a lot of like very like down to earth suggestions, like for like how to apply for work, like what do you need to know when you're like preparing your portfolio to apply for work, and then like what are the things that you need to know like when you're negotiating with your clients, which I think is very valuable for me, because most of us are going into the work applying stage. I think all of the classes I have here are kind of preparing me to have a career as architect. There's a class that's very interesting called representational and spatial analysis. Like it really lets you know about how, like if like after design a project, how do you lay out your design thinking. It was like I haven't encountered such classes before. Like they're like the teachers teach us very different strategies when you're presenting. Like we were asked to make a videos for a house, which I think was very like what was that, like when I was giving this assignment like this. But it's like after that I know how, and I feel like it's definitely a very like a meaning, like an important strategy to represent the design. So like stuff like this, we learn a lot. Is definitely gonna help for work. Yeah, that's my example. I think the preparation system, there's a the things that help me the most is like how do you develop a design, like the process that you need to go through when you're giving a design project. For example, like think about the thesis, think about the design, like fixing the designs, making renders, maybe at the last stage. Like the process like this really helps me. Like it also saves time for me. Like if I'm giving a design project, I know which to start. Like to start with the site is the first one, and then you go to the design process. Like before I go to the architecture school, I was like my mindset was like shaped into like process like this. So after I go to the graduate school, like when I'm giving a project, like no matter like small scale or big scale, I know to start with the site first, and then think about the smaller scale at second, and then think about designs, and then like renders at the last stage. I think the process is really helping me to like think in that way is helpful. I think there are a lot of things that I can do because, for example, the one thing I can do is we learned about environmental design last semester, like how do you save energy from your design. I think that's a very interesting part because like saving energy and do environmental friendly is a big topic, like all the time. Apart from that, you can also design the small stuff like furnitures, even designing a room. And also like you can also do digital visualization, like how do you lay out what is that? How do you lay out information in a reasonable and understandable manner? And also like I've seen people doing there are students from my class like they do both architecture and lighting degree, like this is a dual degree in Parsons, like you can also do that, like learning architecture, like you need to learn about lighting stuff too. So I feel like architecture is like a topic that you have to learn about, like a lot of things other than architecture to have a better understanding about architecture. So there's definitely a lot of things that you can do with this.